Today's webinar is creating accessible documents, and we have AbleText Accessibility Coordinator Rob Carr joining us.
Kim, thanks for having me here this afternoon to give kind of a high-level overview of how to use Word to make more accessible content. The slide deck that Kim sent out, just for the benefit of those of you who joined us, has a lot of stuff to it, but I'm actually just going to go right into Word here in just a minute and demonstrate the different techniques that are documented in the slides. So those you can go back to for reference going forward, but I'm not really going to go through them since we can actually demonstrate this using Word here this afternoon. As you have questions, happy to take those either through your own audio or through the chat. Either way, we will keep an eye on the chat window for questions as they might come up. So I'm going to talk about 7 different things that Microsoft Word lets us do to create a more accessible Word document, which then becomes a more accessible PDF. And pardon me. These techniques are the same whether we're talking about a Word document or if you happen to do stuff just out on the web, then you will find that these are consistent across into the web as well. How you actually address them might be different, but the concepts are still the same. So I'm going to talk a little bit about making sure that you give your Word document a good title, that you make headings and lists that are accessible and structural, not only visible. And I'll explain that as I demonstrate a little bit. We'll talk about how to make sure that visual elements still communicate their meaning to folks that might not be able to see them. We'll talk a little bit about data tables as well. If you all don't mess with data tables very much, then that'll be super quick. And then we'll also talk a little bit about how you use color. And this is one of the things that I think a lot of people kind of overlook. So we'll talk about a couple of points that have to do with color. And finally, how to make sure that links that we type in that go to different web pages are helpful, and that we have text that describes what in the world happens when we follow one of those links. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and move over into Microsoft Word. And this is a, oh wait, let me find my sample document, sorry. This is just some gobbledygook text that Microsoft Word created, but this is what I'm going to use as a jumping off point to demonstrate the way that these things work. Oh, there it is. I'm going to keep my top 7 in front of me so I don't miss anything. So this is Word 2013, and this is a really similar interface to what you might see in 2016 or Office 365. It's a little bit different than 2010. So if you're in Office 2010, this is going to look a little bit different for you, but I will show you, or I'll send you to a website that Microsoft keeps up that lets you go between the different versions really, really easily to find out how to do these things if they are slightly different. So the first thing that I want to do for this is give it a good title. Now, the way that most of us are taught to make a title in Microsoft Word is to go in at the very top of the document. We can come in and say, here's our document title. I'm always really, really creative. I'm typing out literally document title. There are a couple of ways that you've probably been told to do this. One might be just to highlight that text and maybe make it quite a bit bigger, maybe put an underline under it, et cetera, et cetera. The problem is that that's only a visible change. And so anyone who's using a screen reader or a Braille display won't ever hear or be notified that this is a title, because all it did is change the way it looks. Okay, so I don't want to just change the visibles. I'm going to undo all that stuff. And up here at the top, there's another way, and this I think is a little bit, I want to say, misleading. One of the styles that you can find up here in the styles area is in fact for title, but that's not right either. That's going to change it visibly, but it's still not going to make it a title for a screen reader user to hear. So where the title space actually exists is over in the File tab. So I went over all the way to the top left, opened up the File tab, and to the right of that, in kind of the middle of the screen, I've got a little field here labeled title. And there's a field that says add a title. And this is actually where you put the title for the document. So again, I'm going to be super, super creative and type in document title. The nice thing about this is that when someone opens this up as a Word document, if they're using a screen reader or a Braille display, it's going to be the first thing that's read off. It's not going to read a file name. It's going to look for this and read it. When you save this as a PDF, it's going to assign this as the title of the PDF as well. And it does the same thing. So with one little entry here, we've made our Word document and our PDF document more accessible for people who use different assistive technologies. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is headings. And I'm talking about headings for different sections in a document. So in this case, I've got 4 paragraphs, not a very long document for sure, but I'm going to come in and I'm going to say that I've got a section here that, well, let's see, this is about video. So I'll call this section using video in Microsoft Word. The way that we were taught to do this originally was very similar to what I first showed with the title, to make it larger, to make it bold, those kinds of things. And this is where you want to use a feature that's built into Word that actually makes it quicker and easier for us who create documents to do just that. So I'm going to highlight this text, and I'm going to go up and I'm going to go back into this styles area, and I'm going to select heading level up here. You have these different levels of headings. On my screen, I've got heading 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to make this the first heading for the page. This is my main section, first main section, and so I'm going to click on this heading 1 button, and it makes a visible change, which is important for those of us who are sighted because it helps to break up the content and it lets us know visibly that this is not just regular text. The nice thing that it does in the background is it kind of makes the Word document smarter. Now the Word document knows that that text is a heading level 1. It's the first heading on the page, the most important heading right now. And it'll report that out to a screen reader, which will in turn read that aloud. So when VoiceOver or JAWS hits this, it will announce heading level 1 using video in Microsoft Word. What we're looking for when we talk about accessibility in any kind of digital, whether it's Word or HTML, is that we make the experience as equivalent as possible, whether someone uses assistive technology or not. And this is a really key part of doing that. We're making sure that if someone enters into this and has a screen reader reading this content aloud, that they can come in and understand the structure of the content the same way that those of us who are sighted and are looking for these differences that are visible can do. So let's say that in this section I have a subsection. I've got a couple of paragraphs of introduction. I'm going to come in and type, what do you apply? Styles. This is using styles. And let's say that this is a subsection. So the video section is a little bit longer, but it's going to encompass these first 2 paragraphs as well as the next 2 paragraphs. So I have a subsection here. And what I want to do is make sure that I'm consistent and logical when I use these heading styles. So the first thing is I'm going to use a heading style, but I'm going to use this heading level 2. I'm going to make this basically a child of the first heading that I use, the heading level 1. So now I have a subsection in the document. And just like with the first level heading, when a reader hits this, it'll announce that it's a second level heading. One thing to remember with your heading styles is you don't want to assign them as a way to count the headings in a document. I've seen people do that before, very well intentioned, but misunderstanding a little bit about how these heading levels work. What you want to do with the headings is to define the logical structure of the content, not to just keep a number tabs on the headings in the document. It's a really simple thing to do. You can customize the heading styles to look differently. If you just open up Office, you're going to have a different look and feel to the headings than I do, but you can make these look more like you want them to or they need to. And you can save that into templates and into different style sets and such to make it so that you can be really consistent from one document to the next. Now let's say that I've got a list of items down here, and we're talking about using styles, and I'm reading through this little content. This is randomly generated content from Word. It's basically some of their help text. And I'll just say that this is some recap lists. So this will be a little list of tips So my first video tip, my second video tip, and my third video tip. Now with lists like this, lists are really different kind of content. They're not paragraphs. They're usually sentence fragments. There might not even be punctuation. So it's really important, again, to be sure that the way that these things look visibly matches up with the way that they're actually built. So if someone's using that screen reader or that braille display, we need to be sure that that individual also realizes that they're in a list. So the way that I was taught to make a list, let's say in this case I want to make a bulleted list, was to just tab over and I'm going to hit Shift and 8, which gives me the asterisk. And that's supposed to be the bullet in a bulleted list. So I might do that for each one of these to make this list. And again, in the oral tradition that I was raised in, this is how you made a list in any word processor or on the web. But the problem is, again, this is just a visible change. I didn't do anything to change the structure. The great thing about Office now with lists is that if you begin to type a list in Office 2016, it'll take over and start automatically formatting it for you, which is really a good thing. In this case, I'm going to go back and I'm going to undo my formatting here, and I'm going to undo putting in my little asterisks. And instead, I'm just going to highlight these three and go up into this paragraph group. And you've got these controls that probably look really familiar. One will let you create a bulleted list, and then the other two will let you create numbered lists. So if you have a list of steps where it's important to follow through, step 1, step 2, step 3, you might use that. In this case, I'm just going to click the little bullet button, and it's going to give me the bullets. It's going to indent everything consistently, and it makes it so that the Word document, again, knows that this is a list. When a screen reader or braille display hits this now, the first thing that it's going to announce is that there is a list with 3 items. And then when I leave the list, it'll say end of list, so that, again, I know when I've gone into the list, how many items to expect to hear, and I'm going to know when I've gone on to another kind of content. So one little button that makes a huge difference in terms of accessibility. Okay, questions there. Let me see if I've got my chat window handy.
I'm just stirring it up off the bottom.
Okay, I shall move on and talk a little bit about how it is that we can make our images so that they're actually consumable by someone that can't see them. When we put a picture into, again, anything on the web, there is almost always some meaning associated with it. And it's really important that we make sure that that meaning is available for someone that can't see the screen, that can't see the image or can't see it well. Word and just about every other word processing tool out there will support doing this. So the first thing I'm going to do here is just come into my document. I'm going to insert a picture. So I go in through the Insert tab into Pictures. And let's see here. I've got a monkey with a Band-Aid on its head. Seems reasonable enough. So this monkey happens to have a Curious George Band-Aid on its head. This could mean a lot of things depending on the context that I use it in. For our purposes, the main thing that I want to do is show the mechanics of putting this little hidden bit of text in. If someone's using a screen reader or a braille display, that technology can't interpret a picture yet. Actually, if you're using Office 365, then you have at your fingertips from Microsoft a tool that will look at a picture and create a description. But sometimes a description isn't the important thing. It might not be with this picture that the important thing about it is that it's a stuffed animal monkey with a Curious George Band-Aid on its head. There may be another meaning that I try to convey. Facebook has a really similar technology to this where it'll take a picture that you post and it will try to come up with a description. But your text equivalent, what you're looking for when we think about equivalence is equivalent meaning. So that description that comes from a bunch of computers trying to create it may or may not be what we need to use. In previous versions of Office, you don't have that as an option. But in any case, the way to go in and add this little bit of text is going to be the same. So I'm going to right-click on the image. You can also use Shift and F10 to bring this menu up. The very last option in the menu is Format Picture. So from here, I'm going to move over into this Layout and Properties area and open this up. If you're in Microsoft Office 2010, then this will look quite a bit different than it does in 2013 and newer versions. And it actually opens up a separate little window, but you're still looking for the exact same thing. I've got a little option here that is labeled Alt Text with a little arrow that I can click on and expand. And I have a field labeled Title and a field labeled Description. I want to type my alt text. I want to type my text equivalent into the description field. So whatever meaning this image has, I'm going to type in here. A way to think about it would be if you were literally reading your document to somebody over the telephone, then how would you convey the meaning of the picture in that setting when they can't see it? And so here I'm just going to say monkey with the Band-Aid on its head. So again, your images are going to vary. If you ever find a reason to use a picture of a monkey with a Band-Aid on its head, then this might be something that'll be useful for you going forward. But with any of the images that you insert into a Word document, you need to be sure that you include this little bit of information. If you have a really complex picture, say you have a chart or a graph with a whole bunch of data in it, then it might actually be better to just type your equivalent in the document itself, as opposed to hiding it away in this description field. This alternative text is something that people aren't going to find unless they know to open up this menu, or they're using assistive technology like screen readers that will look for it and report it out. So this isn't a place to kind of tuck extra information for readers that don't use assistive technologies. It's a really specific need that this fills.
Hey, Rob, while you're talking about that alt
Sure.
text description, is there any benefit at all to having, capitalizing words properly or putting periods or?
Yeah, the screen reader will read through what you type in here the same way that it'll read through other text, and the readers anymore are sophisticated enough that they'll change the way they read based on punctuation and such. So it's a good idea to pay attention to that. Certainly spelling is really important. I've seen alt text where people didn't really care about editing at all, and they misspelled words, and then the reader's just going to try to read however it's typed. So that's a really good question and a good point, that it does make sense to include punctuation. With something like this, where I literally typed in monkey with a Band-Aid on its head, it wouldn't be as big of a deal. But if you have a couple of sentences to convey the intended meaning, then you'd want to go ahead and type it out correctly.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
There's a good question about the title field. Is the title field important? There's kind of a long answer to this. The short answer is that it's not important for someone using a screen reader. Many of the readers in Braille displays don't look for the title field at all. It depends a little bit. The description field is what the assistive technology looks for. The description field is also what will get sent over as alternative text if you save this as a PDF. So that's why you really want to focus in on the description field for your alt text. The title, if you type text into that, that will appear if you run your mouse pointer over it, and you get that little pop-up box. That's what the title will do. But like I said, for accessibility purposes, you really want to focus in on that description field. Good question, though. Other questions? Okay, very good. So I'll talk a little bit about tables, and really quickly, I just want to ask you all, and you can just type into the chat window real quick. Does anyone deal with any kind of complex data tables? Actually, does anyone deal with tables at all in something like a Word document? Just type a quick note into the chat so I know kind of how much in depth to get. So this would be if you have an Excel sheet with a bunch of data in it, and you create and publish tables. So simple tables.
Rob, I don't really have experience doing this, but I'm thinking that when a teacher types a rubric, that possibly could fit the bill for this. You know, they
Yeah,
have
it
different
may well.
things, requirements, you know,
Mhm.
that make up an assignment. Maybe that would be something you would need to have made accessible.
Yeah, and I'll see it if you know, someone types it or types up a table that shows when assignments are due throughout the semester, for example. So I might use that as an example for our purposes here. So this is going to be a pretty straightforward table, which is really about all that Word can handle. I'm going to put in just a couple of columns and 3 rows, and I'm going to just put, for the sake of ease, assignment number as the header for the first column and due date as the header for the second column. The data for this doesn't really matter. I'll just do assignment number 1 and 2, and I'll say today for the due date and next week. So this is a table that has, you know, a very simple set of data, but it's still data. And so we need to be sure again that when someone runs across this with a screen reader, they know which are the header cells and which are the data cells, and they need to understand that relationship. You know, visibly looking at this, even without bolding the headers, you can kind of infer that, well, I've got a table, 2 columns, assignment number, and then I've got these numbers under it in that column. I think that's assignment number is probably the header for that column, which means due date is the header for the other column. Visibly, we can infer that just by looking. But we need to be sure that we're not asking people to do that if they can't see the table. Then it's not really possible. I will say that Word and Office in general can't really handle complex tables that well just yet. That's why I asked if anyone has the good fortune of having to deal with really complex data tables, because then there's a little bit more to it. But in Word, we can at least do what I'm about to show. So what I want to do is make sure that assignment number and due date are both identified as headers in the table. So I'm just going to select this table row. I just clicked and dragged across it. You can use your keyboard to select the cells across there. And then I'm going to, again, do a right click. A lot of this is available through right click or the Shift F10, which will again bring up this menu. So my context menu now has an option for table properties. And I'm going to select table properties, and I get a little pop-up box. What I'm concerned with is the row tab here, because I've selected this row of headers. So I've got a row tab that I will select. And what I'm looking for is this little checkbox that's labeled repeat as header row at the top of each page. Now, what Microsoft has done over the years is they have taken features that were either to ease readability on a printed page or that were to make life easier for the document authors, and they've attached accessibility to these things. This repeat as header row option has been there for a while. And at some point along the way, Microsoft said, well, why don't we just attach some accessibility to this so that when someone checks to make sure that this is selected, it also makes the table more accessible. You want to check this even if your table doesn't go across multiple pages. When this originally came out, what happened was if your table went from one page to the next, just like this label says, the header row would repeat. So it would be at the beginning of the table on the first page, and it would also be at the beginning on the second page where the table picked up from the previous one. Now what it does is it makes the header cells that you've selected so that, like with our headings and our lists, they are identified as headers in the table. So all there is to it is clicking on this little box, repeat as header row at the top of each page, click on OK, and there's not actually a visible change, but behind the screen, a lot of stuff has happened. What will happen now when someone navigates this table using a reader is that if they navigate into the data cell with the number 2 in it, it'll read assignment number before it reads the number 2. So especially with longer tables, this gets to be increasingly important. But even with a short table like this, where there's not much data, it's still incredibly important to make sure that the screen reader will announce what header applies to which cells. So a simple little thing to do, go in, click a checkbox, and you have a much more accessible data table. And again, this will carry over into PDF. And I'll show you in a few minutes how to not break accessibility when you create a PDF from a Word document. But simple operation here with simple tables. More complex tables do take a little bit more, and that's kind of literally the topic of another talk. So I want to talk about color, and I'm actually going to bring my slides back over here because color and issues with color are really, really common when I look at all kinds of web content, whether it's Word documents or PDFs or web pages. Sorry, I hit the wrong button and didn't go to my color slide. Now this on a projector in a conference space is almost always impossible to read, but here it should at least be difficult to read. So the text says in really light gray on a white background, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. This is going to be impossible to read, really, even if someone's outside on a mobile device trying to read it. It's going to be washed out, whether it's cloudy or sunny outside. It's really important to think about color contrast when we type text over any background color, whether it's white or black, either way. This is one of the most common things that I see when I look at anything for accessibility. And a lot of people don't think about it in context of Word or PowerPoint or the native web. The good thing about color contrast is that it's easy to fix, right? In Word, you can literally select the font color, you can select background colors, and it's just a matter of making sure that you select colors that contrast at a high enough ratio. I converted this from light gray into black, which is now much more legible, but you don't always have to use black and white by any stretch of the imagination. But you do need to think about color contrast. The nice thing is that there is, my slides aren't responding. There we go. There is a little tool, and there are a number of tools out there that will actually let you check color contrast. So this one is a simple little one. I think it should be in the list of links at the end of the slide deck. And if not, I'll make sure I email Kim so that you all can get to this. What this little tool does is it lets you use a little eyedropper to select a text color and a background, and it tells you if it passes the web standards for color contrast. So real quickly, I'll go ahead and show you what this actually looks like. Looks a little bit different than the screenshot that's there, but it works in the exact same way. So what I'm going to do is select my foreground color on my slides. I'm going to check to see if this blue text actually contrasts at a high enough ratio with the white background. I click on the selector button and it zooms in so I can just about literally pick a pixel of color. I'm going to click and it makes the color selection. The other background was already selected as white. And what it does is it actually runs the colors through this algorithm that the really smart web people use to figure out color contrast. And it tells me the color contrast ratio is 5.7 to 1. The ratio we're looking for is 4.5 to 1 to get just a little bit techie, but that's really helpful to know if you use this tool to go in and do a quick check. So I use this tool all the time, especially on Office or PDF content, but I use it pretty frequently on the web as well. And it's a really good way to make sure that you don't end up putting text out there that's hard to read for your audience. And this affects a wide number of users in a number of different situations. I mentioned just being outside and trying to read text that doesn't contrast very well. But folks with a number of different kinds of low vision are going to face that same barrier to your content when they're inside. So
Hey,
really
Rob,
important to think about.
I
Yeah,
know we had this actually, you demonstrated this at the ATIA conference a year ago, and in the room we couldn't even see that sentence that you
right.
had up there at all. And so, and obviously it just really made the point. Is it, how accurate is it when you just, use what you think is going to work? How often are people, totally off base on what they think is accessible? And, kind of a related question, if you use the themes that are out there, for PowerPoint, can you rely on those being a good contrast or not?
So on the first question, I think, and even as much accessibility stuff as I get to do, um, I'm pretty quick to use a tool like this just to be sure. If it's really, like I said, if it's black and white, I know it's going to be okay, but I don't trust even my own eyes to determine what's good and what's not. So if there's any question in my mind, if I use a dark gray that is even approaching sort of lightish, I'll go ahead and use this tool and just double check and be sure. So I think it's difficult for most people to be able to tell. Even if they've done a bunch of testing, I think it can be hard to tell visibly. The second piece with the different libraries of templates that are available for Word or PowerPoint online, you have to search for accessible ones. So if you go out and start looking around, you can find templates that have accounted for accessibility. I haven't done that enough to be able to say that you're always going to be okay if you do that. But you can search for that as one of the key things to keep in mind. You can search for accessible Word templates or PowerPoint templates either way. But they're not all guaranteed to be accessible. In other words, if you just go out and start grabbing them from Office, it may or may not actually have good accessibility. The other thing to keep in mind is just using color to convey meaning. And so this slide shows a really simple little line graph with a blue line, a red line, and a green line. Well, what's the problem? Somebody want to type in the chat what a problem might be for someone who's trying to keep all of this stuff straight. Think about if, for example, someone's red-green colorblind. If someone can't perceive the difference in these colors, then this relatively straightforward looking little chart is basically going to look like this. They're all grayed out here, but if someone can't perceive the difference in color, then that's how they're going to look. For those of us who are in the public sector, we might not have access to a color printer. And if we have a color based chart or graph or something like that, and we print it out in black and white, we end up with what's on screen now. The great thing is that just about every tool in Office will let you avoid this. There are several different ways. The example that is on the screen now uses what they call markers. So if you're in similar version of Word, or really no matter what version of Word or PowerPoint you're in, you can find out how to add these by just searching, for example, Word 2013 markers, and it will tell you. It's a pretty straightforward set of steps to do. You can pick different shapes to go on each line. So in this case now, my blue line has triangles along it, my red line has diamonds, and my green line has squares. So what this does is it makes it so that if I can't distinguish the colors from one another, I can still tell the lines apart. You can do this with different dash patterns on the lines. You can do it with text labels, especially on things like bar charts. There are a lot of ways to avoid this problem. I give this advice every time I mention this. Don't go away saying, this guy said we can't use color. Color is really, really helpful for a large number of members in your audience. The key is to make sure that you use something in addition to color, that you're not only using color to convey meaning. And you also want to think about this with text. So if you make text red for emphasis, you want to add another visible cue, maybe bolding it or putting in an underline to emphasize that text. So the key thing again is not to avoid using color, it's to make sure that you use something in addition to color to make sure that you convey the difference there. So a little bit switching gears to links. We really anymore, whether we're typing up a Word document or typing something online, we we have a lot of reasons to type links. There are a number of web-based resources that we want to document and that we want to share with folks. But there are a few things even with links to keep in mind. We want to be sure that the link text, and the link text is the part that people can actually click on or use the enter key to follow the link, to open that link up. That text needs to be descriptive. It should make sense in the context that it's written in. Kim asks, is it better to use a bit.ly in the link or the actual link? I will come right back to that and answer. I'll give you my opinion about that. That's a really good point that I'll demonstrate here in a second, kind of the advantages of using a URL shortener. The ideal with that link text is to make it make sense on its own. So the web accessibility standards say that links text needs to be logical and needs to make sense in the context of, say, a paragraph. But if you have link text in a paragraph or near one, what you'll see a lot of the times, and you can think about this if you go to news websites, for example, you'll see links that say click here. You know, there'll be a little picture, there'll be the teaser for a story, and then there'll be a link that says click here or read more. You can certainly argue that those make sense in the context that they're used, but there are some practical problems with using the same link text over and over again and having it not really describe what happens. Screen readers, for example, will list all of the links on a page or in a document all in one list for someone who's using the reader. So if you have 10 links that say click here, then that list of links will have 10 that say click here. They all sound the same. So you take away the ability for somebody to quickly get a good idea of the links that are in your document. So I'll give you an example here. This kind of goes back even to a point where we're not using descriptive link text. This link, and I will read this intentionally very quickly when I get to all the numbers. So I apologize to you doing the captioning, but you don't need to keep up with the numbers. This link says https://triton.ok.gov/triton/modules/form.php?form_id equals a whole bunch of numbers and letters. This isn't descriptive at all. It's really hard to tell what happens when I follow this link. In fact, if I see this on its own, about the only thing I pick up is that it's a web-based form, and in this day and time, I'm going to be a little bit unsure of what it's going to ask me to do. So instead, link text that describes what happens when I follow the link might be fill out our webinar evaluation form here. That tells me what happens when I follow the link. In this case, since I had a ridiculously long website address, it also cleans that up and uses a lot less real estate. So for the web, for say a web page, this is the way to go. For Word documents, there are some other things we need to keep in mind. First and foremost, a Word document or a PDF may well be printed out. And if you print something out that says fill out our webinar evaluation form here, and it's a link, well, they're not going to see the website address. So this is where, Kim, your point about the shortened web or the shortened links comes in. What I suggest is to still keep that descriptive link text the same. So the part that somebody will actually hit enter to follow or click on to follow, that still needs to be descriptive. And then put your website address as a note. If you're in PowerPoint, it can be an indented list item because PowerPoint does everything as lists. So you can just hit tab and put your website address in there. In this case, the website address is ridiculously long. So I think it makes a whole lot of sense to use a website address shortener. And Kim, that's what you had asked about, bit.ly, or gosh, there are tons of them that will let you take a website address like the ok.gov address, you copy that, you paste it into the shortener online, and it gives you a really short URL. And that's something then that doesn't waste a bunch of space, but it makes it so that if someone prints out your Word document, they can still actually go to the website. Because again, as a printed document, you can't follow the link. So that's what I suggest. The accessibility standards really only speak to the descriptive link text piece, but I think that it makes a lot of sense in something that might be printed off to add that website address as well.
That makes a lot of sense, Rob. I appreciate that. Hey, we just have about 4 minutes left.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let you know that, and I think you do have a few more points to fit in before we're done. So
Yeah, just a couple. Yeah, no, thank you, Kim, for the note on time there. Again, the slides pretty well just show you how to do a bunch of this stuff. The main thing that I want to show is now that I'm going to bump back over into Word. Now that I've done all this work in my Word document, I want to make sure that I save it as a PDF and that I don't break the accessibility at the same time. One of the ways that I know a lot of folks have been told to create a PDF from Word is to actually go through the print mechanism. So you go into File, you select Print, and one of the options is to print to a PDF. The problem is that all that sends through to the printer is the text. So we went to all the trouble of making sure that we used heading styles and list formatting. We put in alternative text. If you print to a PDF, all that goes away. You still have text, but all the other stuff goes away. So to save your Word document or your PowerPoint file as a more accessible PDF, instead, just save it as a PDF document. So I still do the same thing, and I'll back up and go through it. I still go to the File tab. I select Save As, and I'm going to pick a location for this. And in my Save As dialog box, I have a field with a drop-down menu that says Save As Type, and just select PDF from there. So you select PDF, you save it as a PDF, and depending on your version of Office, most, if not all, of the accessibility work goes along with it. So as a really important last step, if you are going to publish something as a PDF, make sure that you use this instead of printing to a PDF, which, like I say, strips away all the accessibility goodness that you've put in there. That's my last tip. Again, the slides have a lot of screenshots and such about how to do this stuff as a reminder. Microsoft's website has this all really well documented as well. And you can also get a hold of me through Kim. I will also throw my email address here into the chat window. It is rgcarr, R-G-C-A-R-R, at okstate.edu. And with that, and if there aren't any other questions, then Kim, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thanks, Rob. And again, here is our contact information. Rob's email is rgcarr, that's 2 R's, at okstate.edu. You can email me at kimberly.berry@okstate.edu. And of course, we invite you to visit our website, okabletech.okstate.edu, or call our 800 number if you ever have questions, 800-257-1705. And with that, we'll end. And thank you again for joining us. Have a great afternoon.